Most people misunderstand what men really crave in a relationship. They think that if they're kind enough, sweet enough, agreeable enough, men will fall deeply and madly in love. But here's the reality. The moment things get too easy, too predictable, too safe, the excitement begins to fade. Men don't stay madly in love because everything is smooth. They stay in love because you activate something in them that makes them feel alive. And that aliveness, it comes from being challenged. Challenge doesn't mean confrontation. It doesn't mean turning every conversation into a debate. It means you're not afraid to speak your mind. You're not sitting there filtering every sentence, hoping it makes you seem more desirable. Instead, you show up in your full self. You push back when something doesn't sit right. You tease him when he gets too cocky. You surprise him with your boldness. That challenge wakes him up. Most men are surrounded by people who either fear their ego or cater to it. And when everyone is treating him like a king for doing the bare minimum, it gets dull. The high disappears. There's no thrill, no resistance, no spark. But then someone walks in who doesn't hand him validation on a silver platter. Someone who isn't immediately impressed just because he has charm, status, or good looks. That's when everything shifts. He starts wondering, why isn't she falling for me like the others do? That moment of friction creates intrigue. And intrigue is the birthplace of obsession. When you challenge a man in the right way, you're not tearing him down. You're inviting him to step up. You're reminding him that charm alone isn't enough to win you. That you value depth, that you're not just looking for a good time. You're looking for someone who can match your energy, your intellect, your standards. You become the person who forces him to question his patterns, who encourages growth, and who doesn't hesitate to say, I don't agree with that, or I see things differently. That kind of presence is magnetic. This is why men become fixated on the woman who challenges them in the right way. Not because she's difficult for the sake of being difficult, but because she holds her space. She doesn't get swept away in his charm. She doesn't make herself smaller to avoid stepping on his pride. Instead, she lets him see that she's not just another fan in the crowd, she's the main event. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go into every interaction with your guard up or throw out criticism just to see what happens. This is about subtlety. It's about those micro moments when you choose authenticity over approval. When he makes a joke that's borderline arrogant and instead of laughing along, you give him a look and say, really? That's the best you've got. Not with cruelty, with play, with spark. That kind of moment creates tension, not negative tension, but that beautiful, delicious tension that makes people fall in love. It signals that he can't breeze through this interaction like he has with others. He has to engage. He has to earn your attention. You also show that you value yourself enough not to trade your voice for connection. You're not afraid that being honest will drive him away, because deep down, you know that if honesty drives him away, he wasn't right for you anyway. And ironically, when a man feels like he has to rise to your level instead of dragging you down to his, he actually respects you more. He wants to meet you there. He wants to show that you're giving him something to prove. And that desire to prove himself is often the seed of deep emotional attachment. Think of the relationships in his life. How many of them are built on flattery? How many people are afraid to offend him, so they say yes to everything, agree with everything, avoid anything that might bruise his ego? And then imagine how refreshing it must be to encounter someone who doesn't play by those rules. Someone who isn't unkind, but isn't overly accommodating either. That's when he feels a jolt. That's when the addiction begins. This is also about respect. A man doesn't respect the person who panders to him. He may like the attention, sure, but he doesn't respect. The woman he respects is the one who challenges his thinking. The one who can say no without needing to explain. The one who can laugh at his arrogance without making it a big deal. The one who says, I see you, but I see myself too. And I'm not about to shrink so you can shine bright. That's not ego-driven. That's self-worth. And self-worth is irresistible. It's easy to think that challenging a man might scare him off. And you know what? It might. But that's the test. If it scares him off, he wasn't ready. He wasn't looking for depth. He wasn't looking to grow. But if it pulls him in deeper, if it makes him want to understand you more, show up more, invest more, then you've got something real, something that goes beyond surface attraction. He doesn't fall in love because you agreed with everything he said. He falls in love because you made him feel seen and stretched, because you brought both warmth and fire, because you didn't give him what everyone else did. You gave him something new, a feeling that's rare, that's alive, that's electric. And once he's felt that, he won't want to lose it. Playfulness and confidence are the most underrated tools in attraction, especially when it comes to holding a man's attention in a way that makes him keep coming back, thinking about you, craving more of your energy. It's easy to assume that to build attraction you have to be seductive, overly sexy, or dramatic. But real attraction, the kind that drives someone mad, that makes them feel obsessed in the best way, is so often created by the unexpected. A well-timed smirk, a clever comeback, a moment where you make him feel like he doesn't fully have you figured out. That's the secret. That's where the fire lives. When a woman is playful, it tells a man that she's not intimidated, that she's not looking for his approval, that she's in control of her own energy. It's that calm, cheeky confidence that says, I'm having fun with you, but I don't need you to validate me. That's what draws him in, because when someone is playful, they become unpredictable, and unpredictability breeds curiosity. Curiosity breeds connection. Connection, when paired with a little distance and mystery, turns into obsession. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being fully present in the moment and knowing your worth so deeply that you can joke, tease, and even mock him a little, without fear of how he'll react. You're not doing it to offend, you're doing it to spark, you're doing it to stir something inside him, because most men are used to being treated like they're in control of the dynamic. When a woman flips that energy with just one look or comment, suddenly the script is reversed, and that reversal makes him lean in. Playfulness is one of the greatest ways to disarm a man's ego. You're not attacking it, you're not feeding it, you're dancing with it. You're saying, I see you, I get you, but you don't scare me. You might roll your eyes at his bragging, call out his lame pickup line, or tell him, that's cute, but you'll have to do better than that. It's light, but it lands. And what's so powerful about this energy is that it lowers his defenses while raising his desire. He's not used to being around someone who challenges him without being hostile. Someone who knows exactly what she brings to the table and isn't afraid to laugh when he tries too hard. Confidence is the foundation that makes all of this work. Without confidence, playfulness can come off as insecurity or even meanness. But when you're grounded, when you know who you are and you're not trying to prove anything, you can deliver any line, any joke, any challenge, and it feels like flirtation, not aggression. Confidence says, I'm not here to impress you, I'm here to enjoy myself, and that energy is magnetic. Think about the difference between someone who laughs nervously, always agreeing and nodding, and someone who laughs because they find something genuinely funny, then stops and challenges a point with, I don't know about that, explain your logic. The second person isn't trying to be liked, they're being real, and in that realness, they become unforgettable, because you can't forget someone who makes you feel something different. Most interactions in dating feel recycled, the same small talk, the same compliments, the same exchange. But when someone adds that spice, that unpredictability, that bold sense of fun, everything changes. You become the person he compares others to. He might meet someone else who's nice, who's pretty, who's interested, but if she doesn't have that spark, that playful edge, she'll feel flat by comparison. That's what emotional contrast does. It creates highs, it makes interactions memorable, and more than anything, it makes him want to earn your affection, because he doesn't feel like it's guaranteed. He doesn't feel like you're melting at his every word. Instead, he feels like he has to show up, that he has to impress you, and that challenge becomes irresistible. Now, there's also a deeper level to this. When you're playful and confident, you're signaling that you're not overly attached to the outcome, that you're not measuring every moment, wondering, does he like me? Where is this going? You're just being. That freedom is incredibly attractive. It makes a man feel like you're not pressuring him into a role. You're giving him space to explore, to discover, to step forward on his own. That's what builds momentum in a relationship. Not intensity, not desperation, but lightness with depth. You can flirt with your words, sure, but the energy behind them is everything. A playful smirk, a knowing glance, a slow response that makes him wonder. Those are the small moves that create big impact. Because when a man senses that you're having fun with him, but you're not clinging to him, he experiences both connection and mystery. And those two things together, that's rare, that's powerful. Confidence also allows you to hold your boundaries with grace. You can say no with a smile. You can disagree without drama. You can exit a conversation if he crosses a line, and it won't feel reactive, it'll feel strong. He'll see that you're someone who doesn't just demand respect, you embody it. And from that place your words, your energy, your presence, all become more potent. He doesn't just hear what you say, he feels it. That's what keeps him thinking about you long after you're gone. Remember, most men have dated women who said the right things, wore the right outfits, played the part, but didn't move them emotionally. What moves a man is the feeling of being stirred up, of being surprised, of being delighted. That's what playfulness does. It takes him out of his head and into the moment. And when that moment is shared with someone who radiates confidence, it becomes unforgettable. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to script your lines or study seduction techniques. You just have to own who you are. You have to let your natural wit come through. You have to stop filtering yourself for fear of scaring him off, because the right man won't be scared off, he'll be lit up by it. He'll see your playful confidence, not as a threat, but as a breath of fresh air, as the thing he didn't know he was missing, as the reason he can't stop thinking about you. Shrinking yourself to keep someone comfortable is the fastest way to lose your identity in a relationship. It's subtle. At first, you laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You nod along when you disagree. You adjust your schedule, your opinions, even your tone, just to avoid conflict or seem more agreeable. You convince yourself that being easy to be with makes you more lovable. That by removing friction, you're creating peace. But what you're actually doing is dulling your spark. You're silencing your truth. And the person on the other end, even if they can't articulate it, feels the energy shift. They sense the absence of something vital, your realness. Attraction might begin with admiration, but it's sustained by respect. And respect doesn't come from how much you accommodate someone else. It comes from how much you honor yourself in their presence. A man doesn't fall deeply in love because you make his life easier. He falls when you inspire something higher in him. When your presence demands integrity, honesty, presence. When your standards are not about controlling him, but about protecting your self-worth. And he sees that. When you speak up instead of swallowing your voice, even in small moments, you show that your opinions matter, not just to the world, but to you. That level of self-regard creates a gravitational pull. It tells him you are not someone who bends to be liked. You stand to be seen. That's rare. That's unforgettable. It makes you someone he can't put in a box or predict. And unpredictability, when it comes with emotional strength, breeds obsession. Because now he knows he's not in control of how you respond. You are. You choose. You decide. That sense of power, not dominance but inner stability, makes him feel something deeper than just attraction. It makes him feel respect. Respect is the seed of lasting desire. Without it, connection fades. No matter how pretty, charming, or accommodating you are. Because eventually everyone craves depth, craves real, craves truth. And if you've been faking comfort to preserve harmony, that harmony will eventually feel empty. The most powerful thing you can do is create a space where you are fully yourself, where you trust that who you are is enough. Not only to be chosen, but to be valued. When you make yourself small, you're not just robbing yourself of joy, you're robbing him of the experience of connecting with a full, complex, vibrant human being. You're giving him a watered-down version of you, and expecting him to somehow feel intoxicated. But how can anyone fall madly in love with you if you're not showing up as the real you? Love requires truth. It requires edge. It requires fire. When you soften yourself into someone else's preferences, that fire dies. And what's left is comfort, not chemistry. This doesn't mean you need to be combative, or loud, or dominant to earn respect. It's not about being hard, it's about being whole. That means honoring your feelings, even when they're messy, saying no when something doesn't align, walking away when someone crosses a boundary, holding space for your dreams, your time, your voice, even if it makes someone else slightly uncomfortable, because the right people will not only respect that, they will be drawn to it. A man doesn't love a woman because she makes everything easy. He loves her because she makes him feel something real. She challenges him, not in ways that belittle, but in ways that elevate. She reflects the parts of him he's proud of, and the parts he's been avoiding, and she does it without losing herself. That's the kind of woman who changes a man, who stays in his mind, who becomes the standard he compares others to. When you stop people-pleasing and start truth-speaking, everything changes. The quality of your conversations deepens. The way you carry yourself shifts. You move from trying to be chosen to choosing, from hoping for connection to creating connection. That power is subtle, but it's profound. You no longer need to grip tightly to someone who hasn't earned your trust, because your value no longer depends on their response. And that detachment, that self-trust, that's what makes someone magnetic. It's not desperation, it's not demand, it's devotion to your truth. Even when it's hard, you can be kind without being a pushover. You can be loving without being passive. You can be giving without being self-sacrificing. It's not either or. The most captivating people are the ones who blend softness with strength, who can be vulnerable but not victimized, who can listen deeply but speak boldly. That balance is where the magic is. That's where the connection deepens. Because now he knows you're not just here to fill a role. You're here to live a life, a full one, one that he has to earn his way into, not coast into. If you find yourself constantly biting your tongue, smoothing over your truth, or going along to avoid conflict, ask yourself, what am I teaching him about how to treat me? Because every time you betray your inner voice to keep someone else comfortable, you reinforce a version of yourself that isn't real. And over time that performance becomes exhausting. It turns your relationship into a transaction. You give peace, he gives attention. But that kind of connection is shallow. It can't last. What does last is honesty, transparency. That brave moment where you say, I care about you but I care about me too, and this isn't working for me. That level of self-respect, spoken gently but clearly, earns more respect than any sacrifice ever will. The moment you start showing up fully, without apology, is the moment everything changes. You stop fearing rejection because you realize rejection of the real you is actually a gift. You stop performing and start expressing. You stop tolerating crumbs because you know you're not starving. And suddenly, the man who used to be in control of the dynamic now finds himself chasing something he can't quite define, but can't stop thinking about. You. The real you. The woman who doesn't lower her flame to make someone else feel taller. The woman who knows that her power doesn't come from making others feel safe. It comes from making herself feel seen. Love doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in contrast. It grows in those moments of unexpected tension, in the pauses that make his heart race, in the silence after you hold your boundary instead of backing down. It's those little disruptions to his rhythm that make him notice you in a different way. When he feels like he can't quite predict your reaction, when he realizes he can't rely on the same lines, the same gestures that have always worked for him, that's when something shifts. He stops coasting. He starts engaging. His ego gets shaken just enough to make space for something deeper to come through. Most people think love is about making everything feel smooth and harmonious. But that kind of comfort, when it's the only thing a relationship runs on, becomes monotony. It doesn't challenge. It doesn't surprise. It doesn't awaken the parts of someone that lead to growth or emotional intensity. A man doesn't fall madly for the woman who agrees with him on everything, who always nods, who always reassures him. He falls madly for the woman who makes him feel alive, who makes him feel. And real feelings often come from friction, not conflict, but contrast. That beautiful pull between admiration and challenge, between intimacy and independence, between knowing he's wanted but not needed. The reason contrast is so powerful is because it creates space for desire. When everything is predictable, there's no hunger, there's no reaching. But when someone feels like they're being drawn in and held back at the same time, that's where desire lives. It's in that space between I think she likes me and I don't fully have her yet. That uncertainty, when paired with connection, becomes fuel for obsession. He starts looking for cues, analyzing your words, trying to interpret your silence, not because you're playing games, but because you're not trying to control his perception. You're just showing up as you are, with depth, with boundaries, with standards. And that self-possession disrupts the usual dynamic he's used to. That contrast also highlights value. If you're always available, always saying yes, always meeting him exactly where he wants to be, there's no sense of pursuit. But if sometimes you're warm and affectionate, and other times you're focused on your own life, unavailable, occupied, he starts to realize that he can't take your presence for granted, that he has to earn your energy, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that reflects your self-worth. That push-pull, that variation in your rhythm, creates emotional spikes, and those spikes are what imprint you in his memory. He won't remember the woman who always texted back instantly, always said yes, always complimented him. He'll remember the woman who made him feel a little nervous, who challenged something he said in a way that was graceful but firm, the one who didn't give herself too easily, because she knew the value of what she was offering. That emotional contrast is what makes him wake up. It's what flips the switch from she's nice to I can't stop thinking about her. It's also what creates growth. When you bring contrast into a dynamic, whether it's through disagreement, independence, standards, or simply being unapologetically yourself, you give him an opportunity to rise. You're not just someone he connects with emotionally. You become a catalyst. You activate him. And in doing that, you create an emotional imprint that's far more powerful than any surface-level attraction. He's not just drawn to your beauty, your laugh, your affection. He's drawn to the way you move him, and people never forget those who move them. Now it's important to understand the difference between toxic tension and healthy contrast. Toxic tension creates confusion, instability, insecurity. Healthy contrast creates intrigue, reflection, desire. It's not about manipulation, it's about being real, being yourself even when that self isn't perfectly polished. It's about saying no when you mean no. It's about not always being available. It's about calling out behavior that doesn't align with your values. Not to shame him, but to honor yourself. That kind of honesty can feel jarring, especially for someone who's used to being praised, but it also creates respect, because it tells him, you're not above growth, and I'm not beneath asking for it. The women who are remembered long after the moment passes aren't always the most agreeable, or the ones who tried hardest to please. They're the ones who made someone feel, who were unpredictable, in the best way, who knew how to give warmth, but also step away, who didn't compromise themselves for validation. Because what a man values most, even if he doesn't say it out loud, is someone who makes him feel like he has to show up differently, like he has to become more thoughtful, more attentive, more intentional. That's the kind of change that's the kind of energy that makes a man fall. Not politely, not conveniently, but deeply. Contrast also brings clarity. When you stop trying to be easy to love, and start just being with your complexities, your edges, your standards, you allow people to reveal who they really are. You see who leans in and who pulls away, who rises and who resents. And the ones who lean in, who rise, who evolve because of your presence, those are the ones who are capable of real love. Because they're not just in love with your image, they're in love with with what you stir up in them. When a man experiences that kind of contrast, where he feels both the comfort of connection and the challenge of not being able to control the dynamic, he doesn't walk away bored, he walks away lit up, curious, a little destabilized in the best way. That destabilization leads to growth, and growth creates emotional bonding, because now it's not just about attraction, it's about evolution. You become the reason he starts thinking differently, showing up differently, living differently, not because you demanded it, but because you inspired it through contrast. You were the mirror, the spark, the shift. You didn't try to be everything he wanted. You were everything you are. And that contrast between who he thought you'd be and who you actually are is what makes the connection unforgettable. It's what makes him not just fall, but fall madly, wildly, and deeply. Because you didn't give him comfort. You gave him something real, something that moved him, something he didn't see coming. And that's what love is built on. So when you stop walking on eggshells around a man's ego and start showing up in your full unapologetic power, something changed. You stop being just another woman trying to be liked, and you become the woman he can't stop thinking about. Not because you were easy, not because you always agreed, but because you made him feel something rare. You sparked desire, respect, and curiosity, all at once. You didn't flatter him. You challenged him. You didn't chase him. You made him rise, and in doing so you became unforgettable, because real love doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from daring to stand in your truth, and letting the right person meet you there. That's what makes him fall, not gently, but madly.